We're not in here to do a job. We're not in here to win a bid. We're here to own the customer. That's how you build tremendous value within your organization.
AltaVista, the highest view in contractor marketing.
If you're not listening to the angle, you will surely fall behind.
Are you going to exist in your space, or are you going to dominate?
Trust the process.
Are you planning for today or adapting for the future?
This is the AltaVista Angle. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the AltaVista Angle, the podcast by AltaVista Strategic Partners. I'm Aaron Hockel, your host. Back today with us, we have Bryan Dunkel and McLaughlin. We're here to talk today about owning the customer relationship and how valuable that can be to your business. But before we get into that topic, we're going to kick it over to Ray for a quick economic update.
Yeah, first of all, I'm super pumped about this episode. I think it's something that we could have covered a long time ago, but I think that with the information that we've gathered over the last 6-7 months, I think this is really something that we can do a great job of covering. Really looking forward to the episode. On the economy, obviously, new Fed chair came in. They did not cut rates. They did not raise rates. That's sort of what we anticipated. With the current state of the war, obviously, I hate to say it's over, but probably for the U.S. it's over. You got a midterm election coming. We have no business being over there at this point in time. Oil's plummeting, which is what you want to see. I do caution people. It takes a long time for that to filter through the gasoline prices and jet fuel prices. It doesn't come down as quick as it goes up. And then that oil that creates inflation inherently within the economy, it takes a long time for that to clean up. So that'll take some time to get through. We need to see inflation come down. That's it. And that's what you should be watching at this point in time. Is you're not going to be able to look at it over a 30-day lens. You're going to look over like a 6-month lens, but we need to see that come down month over month moving forward. If it doesn't, I think that could change some things. One of the things I did want to talk about was I did some research on office, because as we cover residential homes and we cover contractors that do residential work, they're doing commercial work. Commercials, primarily made up of industrial, office, you call multifamily commercial. Office has been the worst of all the segments, but we're seeing a bottoming in office, which doesn't mean a good thing, in my opinion. You're seeing a migration of tenants move into Class A spaces, which is causing, say, Class B and Class C to really struggle. So I'd be cautious working in Class B spaces where you don't know the owner, and if you understand their capitalization, their ability to pay. You also are seeing a phenomenon where the wall of loans are coming to maturity, and they're going to have to refi these loans. And if they can't refi the loan because the asset value has decreased so much, they'll either have to put capital back into the entity, which is highly unlikely. My guess will be they won't. Then the banks will take the property into receivership. That could be a positive at some point, because the bank's going to want to recap it and get their investment back. If they tear it down or they modernize it or they renovate it, maybe convert it is a question. That's going to take a bit. That's going to take some time. I do equate it and sort of juxtapose it to what happened in retail. If you think about retail, when Amazon came out and everyone's online shopping, retail was going away. We didn't build any retail shopping centers for 15 years. And now all the Class A shopping centers are actually thriving because they don't have any competition. And so it's going to take a long time for office to get there. It'll probably take 15 years, quite frankly. But I do hope that office starts to recover a bit more and we start to see some conversions and at least repurposing of some of these buildings. But again, I do think we're seeing the bottom of office. That's all I have for you. Hopefully
Cool.
insightful.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So let's talk about it here, right? You mentioned Class A shopping centers. We mentioned Class A office is probably doing okay right now. Let's say you get a great opportunity to go talk to a property manager of a great Class A shopping center about, they need a roof, they need painting, whatever it needs, right? Let's talk about that journey of, we got this opportunity to talk to John Doe property manager or Jane Doe facility manager for the first time. What does that journey look like from that first opportunity to what we'll call owning the relationship with the customer?
Yeah, and that's a long journey, right?
Yeah.
From
Yes.
from starting with the customer to owning the relationship. And I would challenge all of our listeners and all of our clients to think through, how long does that journey take? Right? And is it different with each customer? And it certainly is. But that's the goal. We're not in here to do a job. We're not in here to win a bid, right? We're here to own the customer. That's how you build tremendous value within your organization. So owning the relationship, and how long does that take? What steps does it take after you actually think you own the relationship? When purchasing gets involved because Billy Smith has been sole sourcing you, or a new VP comes in and wants to bring in his contact, right? How do you manage the opportunities and the threats of owning that relationship? And that's what I want to cover today. I think it's really important. So think of it as owning the relationship, and how long does that take? And then what are the maintenance issues that are required? If you think you're going to own the relationship once you've got it, like if it takes a year or two, and in perpetuity you're going to own that relationship, you're delusional. It's not going to happen. I own multiple relationships in my business. My favorite was Simon Properties. I did a lot of the Simon Properties work in the Baltimore Metro, and I had phenomenal relationships, sole sourced relationships, even on project work. Then, national lighting vendor comes in, Lithonia. They actually made the light bulbs, right? I can't compete with Lithonia. They're going to sell the light bulbs for half of what I can sell it for. And they're going to come in with their own bucket trucks now. And they're going to bring in electricians and do the whole account nationally. So my owned relationships in the Baltimore, Washington Metro were pinched by the national providers. It's just it's the nature of the beast, right? Yeah. So those are the threats that come in. So again, just because you own the relationship today, don't think you're going to own it forever. So what is step one? What's it take? I'll throw it back to you guys. You guys were never contractors. We certainly have a lot of contractor customers. What's step one in owning a relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I think setting from the initial opportunity coming in, responding quickly and doing things right from the very first moment are important, because there's 3 life cycles to this, right? We have to win the first one. We have to grow the account. We have to, we'll say, maintain or defend the relationship from threats, right? Those would be kind of the 3 stages, maybe, as we look at it, if you kind of group it that way. So in that stage 1 of, someone contacts AltaVista through the website, how fast do we respond to that? How fast do we set that meeting? How does that meeting go, right? The translation there I might give is, someone calls and asks you for an estimate for the first time. How fast are you scheduling that appointment? How does the site walk go? How do you perform? Your professionalism through all those early stages, I think, are a super important part of this. Bryan Dunkel, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think on any initial call, again, whether it's at AltaVista or one of our clients, what's the value? What's the value add? And I do think, a lot of stuff gets lost, in the sauce, if you will, where, you want to win the project and you're not thinking about winning the relationship. And I think everything really, for me, ties to trust. You have to be a trusted advisor. And again, whether that's at AltaVista or whether that's a roofing contractor we work with in Salt Lake City, or a plumbing company we work with in Washington, D.C. You want to be an advisor rather than just a vendor. And, again, you can't convey that on an initial call, but you can convey that on an initial job. And I know, Ray, you have, I think, a good anecdote in terms of, how do you get that first job?
Yeah. Hockel, you like the way I stole the moderator job from you on this episode? I've been waiting.
Yeah, that's great.
No, I'm kidding. You're better at it than I am. No, those are all great points. I think for me, does it really matter what the first opportunity is? If it's the target customer, we're here in Baltimore, McCormick Spice is one of the bigger industrial manufacturers in the city. You're not doing business with McCormick Spice. Do you care what they ask you for on the first one?
No.
You shouldn't.
No.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we see clients that say, well, it was a really small job. Well, that's good news, because you're probably not going to screw up the first small one. And it's a lot easier to get the small one. So I like to think that the small one's the better one to start with, and then you can build from there. Think of it as a wedge to get into the building, or to get into the relationship. I don't care what the wedge is. It can be a service offering, something you do differently than your competitor. It could be an opportunity to provide a second or third bid. That's not a negative. Once you get the opportunity, if it's a target customer, you have to win. You have to win. And winning that, if it's a job, and I'd rather it be a small job, because if you can define the buying criteria with the plant manager, they called you for a reason. Okay. They might be using XYZ Electric, and maybe they're just getting a second bid to cover their tracks. Well, there's a real easy way to figure that out. I'd like to come over and meet you, maybe walk the job tomorrow or Thursday. No, you don't have to walk the job. Just send me a proposal. Well, you figured it out. But do you quit there? No, you don't quit. Because again, if he or she's looking for a second bid, your job is to figure out, well, look, what are the disadvantages of not having multiple providers? Wouldn't it add value to be a backup provider? Have a backup provider. I'm willing to be that. I'm willing to be that provider, but until you meet me and understand what we're good at and where we align, are we the right fit? That wouldn't make any sense. I don't want to just send you a bid. That doesn't make sense. It's your job, right? You're a salesperson. Whether you're the owner or you're a salesperson, your job is to understand, how do I win this first one?
Yeah. To your point, like, where you got to have your differentiator. If you're just the bid, you're just one of 5 bids, 6 bids, you're a number. Where there's no value that you can't compete on price. And to your point, if it's the right customer, do whatever you can. Show up, follow through, do a good job. It's communicate. It's really easy stuff, in my opinion. And I say this all the time to clients: singles and doubles turn into home runs.
Sure.
You got to start somewhere. Ray, you always had that anecdote. I think you were talking to Jake when he was growing up. You think, you're just going to walk out and become an all-star, like, without practice, or, building some of that trust, building relationships, setting the table. So
I think actually, for all you parents out there, I'll give it to you because of the good one. He wasn't practicing hard enough in basketball, and he was a really good player, but he just wasn't practicing hard enough. And I said, you just want to skip everything and go right to the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, that's right.
And I think he went out and started shooting baskets the next day.
That's a great point, though.
Yeah. But you have to win. You have to win that first job. My father-in-law taught me this when I was 24, one of my mentors. He said, buy the first job. If you have to buy it, buy it. You can't lose the first one. That's it. End of story. Our clients don't love to hear that, right? Because they don't know if they're going to get the second job. But who cares if you take a $5,000 project with no margin? Who cares? It's a plant manager managing a 2 million square foot industrial building. You got your opportunity you bought a cup of coffee. It's an expensive cup of coffee, by the way, but you bought a cup of coffee. And then once you get it, right, if you just accept that I'm going to win this job, or I'm going to do whatever they ask me to do. Maybe they want you to value engineer a drawing, and they want to do some lighting work, and you're going to do that work pro bono just to get a chance to bid it. You can set the table and say, look, I'll do the value engineering for you pro bono. I just want last look on the bid. That's fine. If you don't know how to do that, then we have to have another conversation. But yeah, you don't do anything for free without asking for something back on last look. But win it. If you don't win it, we should stop talking to that. We should end this episode. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
If you don't win it,
yeah, you got to win.
Turn it off. And if you disagree with me, turn the episode off. I built the business this way. I'm a sales guy from Xerox. I know nothing about electrical work. I was a helper when I was 15 years old. I was lucky enough to land at Xerox Corporation selling copiers. I went into the electrical business, and it was the easiest thing I've ever done in my life, was take customers from every electrical contractor in Baltimore. And I left the business with 900 commercial customers. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. My father was in the Independent Electrical Contractors Association, which is all the independent guys around Baltimore. A tough group of dudes too, by the way. He had to stop going to the meetings. He's like, you're taking all my friends' customers. I said, well, if they did a better job, I wouldn't take them. But I go, they're not making customers. I'm going to take all your friends' customers. And it didn't work that way in my dad's era. I mean, he's born in 1925. That's not the way it worked. And he did stop going to the meetings. But taking customers from these guys was simple because they stunk. They always did something wrong. And we had to pivot on that. And that's how we grew the business. But if we didn't win the job or meet with face to face with those customers and use the line, we're here to be a backup provider. We're not coming in and swooping in. But then what do we do to then continue to own the relationship? And I think this is probably the hardest part, right?
Yeah.
Follow up.
Absolutely. Right. So, you get the opportunity, you win, whether that's through you're a better salesperson, you win the job, you discount it, whatever it is, right? We've won. I think making sure that you pod that job, right? The classic pod, right? Like under promise, over deliver on that job, set a really clear expectation and then come in and just kill it. I think that's really important too, right? To set the tone. Because if you don't do a good job on the first one, or there's some issues here and there, right? Like you might have a challenge.
Yeah. There's probably not going to be a second one.
There's probably not going to be a second one if you don't come in and do a good job. So let's not skip that step.
Hockel, you should get started your own electrical contracting business, because that is the most important part, is you kill it. I wouldn't even UPOD it. If you don't know what UPOD is, it's under promise, over deliver. I would just over deliver on the scheduling, the communication, the customer service, the folks you put on the job, and then the follow-up. How do we do? If there's any warranty issues, you respond the next minute. If you miss this, it's worse than not winning the job, because you got in the door and you just walked your way right out the door, right?
Yep.
And I don't think our clients are thinking that. They're like, oh, I got this job and there's no profit in it. No, this is your opportunity to blow up a customer, to take a customer from one $5,000 job to a steady $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year relationship at 40 points, 40 GP points, because a lot of that work is not going to get bid out. A lot of industrial and institutional buyers don't like bidding work, small work. The local utility had a limit where they weren't even allowed to bid work because it actually costs them more money. So any PO under $10,000 at the local utility in Baltimore was a no bid deal. It costs them 10 grand to run through the bid process. So I'm like, how about we do this job for $9,999 fucking 3 times? Sorry for the F-bomb. And guess what? The facilities director is like, what a great idea. I don't have to, it's a $30,000 broad. We're doing it in 3 phases. But when you own the relationship, you can do that stuff. You can't do that in day one.
Yeah. But I just think stressing that coming out strong is super important in this process, right? Because if you don't do that, there is no reason to kind of keep going, right?
Here's another challenge, though. I got a good one for you. And real world story. Local utility in Baltimore, I'm in their facilities department. The company that bought me actually had done a mailer to the facility department at the local utility. And the facilities VP was a good friend of mine. And I saw the mailer on his desk. And I knew these guys. I had known them for years. And I said, did you respond to that mailer? And he goes, I actually did. I had some concrete work, and I always have a hard time finding concrete vendors. So he responded to the flyer and actually got a project, which was really hard to do because you had to be on the approved vendor list, which we were. But it just shows you can maneuver sometimes. 5 months later, he had forgotten their name. He had no idea who they were. He called me. He's like, what was the name of that concrete company that I used? So that takes me on to what's next. Just because you did one job doesn't even assure you that they'll remember your company name or your name.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do that one job, you exceed the expectations, what other steps are you going to do to make sure your brand is front and center for the next job and the next job?
And I think there's a lot of ways to answer that one, right? And I think there's two paths there. I think there is a marketing function, quite honestly, of, they get the holiday card, they get an email, they get there is some marketing there. But I think when it comes to owning a relationship, it really starts to boil down to what does a salesperson do, right? And how do they cultivate it, and how do they, build it? And so Bryan Dunkel, I mean, you obviously we're both on the sales side, but you have a lot of great customer relationships. What's one or two things that you like to do, I'll say in the first 90 days of a new customer for AltaVista, maybe 6 months? Anything you can share there?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I really think you just have to stay visible. And I mean, that's everything. You kind of hit on it, whether that's, always in the beginning, it's monthly check-ins. You don't want to leave anything to chance, especially in the beginning. And then, maybe as a relationship progresses, maybe that's quarterly check-ins, but maybe it's value add. Hey, Mr. Customer, right? Saw this and thought of you, right? Just something simple, right? Or, I know Ray's a big proponent of just sending, a package. And we do that, client appreciation gifts. I mean, it's huge. You want to stay top of mind. And there are so many different ways. And again, this, it all roads lead back to sales, right? Touch points, right? How do I stay in front of the person I want to do business with consistently and proactively? But I think that's hitting the nail on the head. Just being visible and not just showing up when you need something, not showing up when you're looking for work. Because again, if you're in front of that buyer, they're going to think of you. You're already going to be top of mind. And, to Ray's point, if it's under a certain threshold, they'll just go right to you. And that's the whole idea, is you just don't want one-off jobs. You want clients, long-term relationships, repeat business, reoccurring revenue. I mean, that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Another rule from my father-in-law just popped into my head when you said that. Again, we're talking old school guy, but it still works. You better take him to lunch.
Yeah.
Or I will.
Well, and that's a great
And
point.
hold on. Ray's rules of business. I just pulled them up. And a lot of these are things I've learned over the years. There's 34 of them. But I did integrate that. And I don't like taking people to lunch anymore. I'm 56. I'm semi-retired, by the way, Hockel. I sent a note to somebody telling them I was semi-retired. I was the happiest day of my life. Basically, like, I don't want to talk to you. Go call somebody else.
Yeah.
But
Appreciate
no, my days of taking people to lunch are over. But if you're not taking them to lunch, getting in and having a cup of coffee, finding out whether it's just fun. Like, somebody gave me when I was traveling. Actually, no, I was reading Dunkel's father's Sales Truths, and he made a really good point. He talked about when he was doing business, and I'll botch the states. When he was in Nebraska, he would go to lunch and they never talked business. And when the customer went to the restroom, he said to the rep, like, are we ever going to talk about it? He's like, no, we don't talk about it. Right. But when he would go to the Northeast, like in the New York Metro, it was like, what do you have for me? I'm watching the clock. So understanding that you do need that FaceTime, and then how to manage that FaceTime in the environment you're in. I thought that was really good. So make sure you tell your dad I read his newsletter.
I will.
Yeah. Universal Sales Truths by Scott Dunkel. Look it up on Amazon. Shameless plug for Bryan's dad here. It's a fascinating book and a great newsletter. But no, I was actually going to say the lunch thing. It's actually an advantage a lot of our customers have, is that, you have a rep on the ground in Baltimore. 90% of AltaVista's customers are outside of Baltimore, where we're headquartered. we have a pretty committed effort to getting out on the road and seeing people and doing face to face. But, it's a big advantage when you can just stop by, you can drop something off, you can take them to lunch, right? So I think those things are something that people need to make sure they're capitalizing on, all the time. And it's something that we are at a disadvantage at, right? It's hard for me just to take someone in California to lunch, or for Bryan to just take someone from Boston to lunch, right? We can't do that. Hey, my lunch opened up today. I can't just shoot that text to 95% of our customers.
Yeah,
right?
it's a huge challenge for us. I mean, honestly.
Well, I'm just saying, but it's such a great opportunity, so that if you are a rep and you do work the Boston area, thinking about your day, hey, can I see this person? Can I stop by that person? We still have a number of customers that do a lot of old school cold calling, stopping by, dropping off, handing things out. And these are some of the more successful customers that we have. Very large customers, by the way. And they're very committed to, we're going to go canvas almost in a sense, stopping by industrial buildings, right? So it just is a good opportunity. And especially with current customers, right? In that early phase, kind of shows some dedication to them, some hunger. I do think that's a big thing too. When you show people you want that relationship, they're more likely to accept it back.
Yeah. And I think we don't want to talk a lot about marketing here, because, in 2026, though, you have to integrate marketing into this. Like, in 1975, you took a guy to the Oriole game, and then you took him to the Ravens game, and probably won a couple places after the game, by the way. And there's a client for life. That those days are not like they were, right? I did a martini lunch once with a buyer, and he literally is drinking martinis at Ruth Chris. And I'm like, I'm definitely getting this job. And it was a Baltimore City job, and I wasn't even on the approved list, and he gave it to me anyway. I'm not even kidding you. When it was time to get paid, he's like, "You're not even in the system." I go, "I already told you that." But those days are over. Well, they're just a little fewer and far between. But yeah, you do have to still get that time and understand what you're going to talk about and how to continue to evolve it. It's just critically important.
Yeah. And I think there too, Ray, as we talk about time and things changing, something we talked about kind of as we were getting ready to jump on here today was making sure we're identifying the right accounts to do this with, right? That was something you said, right? Like, hey, if you're the local restaurant or liquor store or whatever, sure, I'll do it. But making sure we're identifying the right accounts. You know what I mean? Every customer is important, but you're like, hey, I have customer service reps that can do a really great job helping that person, communicating with that person, servicing that account. My salespeople, my hunters, I really need them building relationships with the right people. I think that was something that you kind of had mentioned.
Yeah. It's critical that you prioritize the ones that you want. I used like Dawson's Liquor, right? If I'm in Baltimore and Dawson's Liquor calls me, and they have one location and they're going to spend $20,000 a year, I'm going to give them an account manager who I expect to do the same work that I would be doing. But when the lead came in for McCormick or Under Armour or T. Rowe Price, I'm in my car, literally meeting with the facilities director, me, not my sales rep. I chose to take those accounts. Now, I would take an estimator with me who I was going to hand the tactical relationship off to, right? Because I don't bid work. I don't do the work. I'm not going to be on site. And then I'd manage the relationship from a high level. I'd have my people managing their relationships in a similar fashion, probably not as well, but you still want to give all the customers some connection to the business. When they call in, it's, hey, Joe, thanks for calling. It's not like you don't know their name, even though they're $20,000 a year customer. But yeah, you want to pick your spots. And if you can as a business owner, you better have the right people managing these relationships. You need killers managing these relationships, not somebody you hired who is okay and they're good talking to customers. People that can uncover needs. They sit down and have a cup of coffee and they say, hey, how did we do in that last job? Man, you guys knocked the cover off the ball. What's the next? What's next for 2026? what's coming up in the summer? You got any new projects we can help out with? Right? Some people just aren't comfortable doing that. That's what good relationship managers will do. They know how to transition the conversation to more work. It's so natural. I was in a meeting with somebody who didn't get it, and I'm like, they're giving it to you. They just open the door. All you have to do is walk through it. And they do, because all they want, you said trust, Brian. Trust is critically important. They want the work done. They want to feel good about what you did. They want to look good. You need to make your client look good. So if the VP of facilities comes in, you want to make sure that if a mistake was made and it wasn't even your fault, like sometimes you might even let the plant manager or the facility manager, just make him look good, make he or she look good, because that is your job. They want their bosses to understand that, hey, they're running the business effectively. So yeah, you're just building that relationship, whatever it takes.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
Well, that's the thing too. They got multiple tenants, multiple properties. They want few headaches, few surprises. Just get the job done, and again, it's going to make them look better. And I think that's, and I don't know where you're going next, Aaron, but I know part of what we want to talk about is kind of building even deeper relationships within organizations, not just having one, singular point of contact. You gotta penetrate more, get more contact,
Before we move to that, because I'm the moderator, as I already told you.
Well, start asking questions.
I designed the agenda. I have to be the moderator. Anyway, so what we missed is handling that first hurdle or the first objection or obstacle. You get the job, right? And inevitably something goes wrong in the first week or two. It happens. I mean, I can't tell you every job that we wanted and we couldn't wait to get. It would blow up on us. Something would happen. The materials would be delayed. The pricing of the materials would go up. The scheduling would be difficult. Their timeline changed. They need it done faster. We can view that as a negative. I view those as a positive. I like to get an obstacle or an objection early on in the relationship, and I want to handle it really, really well. That deepens the relationship much quicker than if the job just went super smooth. Because how you handle that first problem shows what kind of business person you are. And it gives you a chance to do what you say you do versus just talking the talk. And now, I wasn't trying to sabotage projects, by the way. We were just really good at screwing things up, I guess. But no, like I can give you an example where electrical costs went up and, an email went out to all customers. There was a 15% increase and, it's effective immediately because copper went up. And I just was like, dude, we didn't send that to the new customer, did we? Oh, well, he was in the distribution list. I'd pick up the phone and call Bill and say, hey, Bill, I know you got that email, disregard it. I'm eating this. Okay, great. That's good, right? Because it shows your commitment to the business and the relationship, and you've established a deeper level of trust. If you're not willing to do that on job 1 and 2 and 3, you're going to lose a customer. They're just not going to trust you enough, even if the increase was real, right? They're not going to trust you. It's too early. So
yeah, absolutely right.
But let's say you get there. We're there. We've done all these things, and we finally have the facilities manager really likes us. I'm going to go back to my story because I started with one customer. I inherited the local utility from my father. He was an electrical contractor. He had one employee, he himself, and he had one customer. It was a $50,000 a year customer that I inherited. When I landed and when I ended with 900 customers, I went through this process with every one of them. And we had outbound marketing rolling all the time. It didn't matter what they needed. When the VP of facilities of the fastest growing bank was on the phone with my telemarketer. And his exact quote was, I don't need you. I'm doing business with XYZ. I love XYZ, but they don't have a bucket truck. I use that as a wedge, and I had a bucket truck, and I had multiple bucket trucks because a lot of my competition didn't. I use it as a wedge. I created another little group that did infrared testing. No non-union electrical contractors back then did infrared testing. So we would go and wedge our way in with infrared testing. And the nice thing is that you can figure out how you get the repairs off of that. So these are all tactics that I used over a 14-year span. I don't think without fail, honestly. And the reason I say that is because my competition was pretty substandard and they couldn't deliver. I had one formidable competitor in the space in Baltimore. They were a little unscrupulous with price, and I think that kind of hurt them. And I became very good friends with the owner of that company. And she's like, thank you for kicking my teeth in for 14 years. And when I sold the business, she actually gave me a hug at a trade show. So this shit works, by the way. Just live it. All right, let's get into now. How do you make it bigger, right?
Yeah, that's a great.
Expand
Yeah,
it.
we've gotten through all of this, right? What's the expansion? What's the everything look like? I'm going to lead with an easy one, and that is like you just have to ask sometimes. Right? Like, hey, do you need anything else? Do you have any other properties? Can we do this? Like, you just have to ask for it, and not being afraid to ask for it, I think, is something that's really important. Like, if you've been rolling along 4 months, 6 months, you'll have to kind of have your instincts guide when the time is right. But if you feel the time is right, just ask is probably a big first step for a lot of people.
But
What you ask for,
when we ask when we've done something really well. We ask for that when we have a moment with the customer. You don't ask him on the phone when he's screaming at his receptionist or secretary, hold that call, I'll be there in 2 minutes. You finish the project, you get in front of the customer. How do we do? Right? You guys are great. Now we ask. Because that ask is so critical to the growth. Like, if you ask, let's say the job didn't go so well. I got a great one, by the way. This is phenomenal. I bought that boat and it doesn't work. So yeah, I'm not going to tell you what I paid for the boat, but I bought a brand new boat for a lot of money. More than my first house, twice the cost of my first house. Didn't work. The people in the process were great. The sales guy was great. They called me for a customer service review with the boat sitting on my dock, asking me to evaluate my level of satisfaction.
sounds like a Xerox copier.
I'm like, yeah, it worked. I'm like, this is the wrong time to ask. And I actually said to the woman on the phone, who was very nice, I go, this just isn't a good time. But she didn't know. She called me back tomorrow. I go, you really don't understand why this is a good. Call Brandon and he'll tell you why. So when do you ask is really critically important. Now, look, the president of the boat manufacturer, which is $1 billion company, emailed me and said, we're going to take care of this. And within 5 business days, it's resolved. Send me the survey. I'm happy. That when to ask is critically important, because if you ask at the wrong time, you can't expand the ask. The relationships here, we're going to expand it. So the timing in which we ask is so critically important, and making sure that your buyer is in an environment where they can have a dialogue. And then what are the limits for what you ask of that buyer at that point?
That's what I was going to ask, actually.
Yeah,
what do you guys think about, like, how targeted should the ask be? Should it be broad? Should it be specific? Does it matter? Is it situational? Is it like, hey, Ray, I know you know Bryan Dunkel. I know he works at this property. Can I take both of you to lunch? Or, hey, do you have any more, any insight or guidance on, like, kind of that ask should be strategic? What does it look like? I don't know, either one of you.
I'll go, but Dunkel, I don't know if you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I honestly, I think it's situational, right? Because maybe you heard through some tea leaves that there's a project coming up, and it's a property manager that sits maybe 30 miles away, and that could be a direct door opening. right? And you know the project's coming, so you can be a little bit more specific, right? But if it's in the broader context, you can talk about, hey, what's going on? What do you see down the pipeline, right? Do you have any colleagues that, could have a need for my services? So I do just think, depending on the information you have, and obviously, what you're looking to accomplish in your business, I think it's situational. But Ray, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but I would say for me, it's a sequence. It has to be a sequence because you've done one or two jobs for this plant manager. You don't know if you own the relationship yet. So what I would start with is, hey, Bill, how'd we do? You guys did a great job. What do you have coming up in the second half of 26? If he's forthcoming with everything he's got going on, and he's like, I'm going to plug you in here. I got this project down in, Columbia, Maryland. I hope you service that area. I want to get you plugged in here in all these places. You do own that relationship. And I think at that point in time, you expand the ask. Let's say you go for that. What do you have coming up in 2026? The rest of the second half, he says, well, I'm getting a little pressure from above. XYZ's been in here doing work for a long time. I'm going to try to keep you in here, but again, he's got relationships higher up. You got to own that first one. Once you own the first one, because if you don't own the first one, they're not ready to plug you yet. Only when they're completely comfortable. Let me say that 2 times, 3 times, 5 times. Now, with painting, it might be different than electrical, because if you're bad at electrical, bad shit really happens. So they're very cautious about referring you until you haven't burned a couple buildings down. And I'm very serious about that. The trust factor with electrical HVAC is different than handyman and say paint. I mean, paint's really important, right? But if you're painting a break room and you mess it up, like, it's not going to burn the building down. So they want to make sure they can trust you and have confidence before they refer you. They don't refer early. They just don't. They need confidence. So I like the sequence approach. And then once you've got the relationship, ask for anything you want. And what's great is, like, you can transition it to, I'd really love to do business in your Waldorf plant and your Vienna, Virginia plant. How can you and I get together with those folks? And then they're like, yeah, no problem. Let's go to a ball game. Let's have a lunch. Let's do this. Let's do a lunch, whatever. It's endless at that point. And guess what? You start the steps all with the Virginia plant manager, the Waldorf plant manager. And that's how you own the relationship. It gets deeper than that too, and we'll talk about that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if you really master this thing, you own the relationship. You get so deep, and we're gonna cover some stuff that's even tougher. But for now, I think we leave it there.
Yeah. I mean, look, so we talk about some steps to kind of asking and growing the relationship. We've been rolling along for 2 or 3 years, right? We think we own it. And all of a sudden, Lithonia shows up and we can do everything for everybody. Right? We can do, hey, we don't need you anymore, right? We've been told by National to use Lithonia for everything, right?
That's right.
Some of those bombs might be insurmountable in some instances, right?
Yeah.
What are some other things that you see as those big threats or those big challenges, and what does it look like when they come?
Well, I think when you're there and you think you've got it, right? You think you own the relationship. If you're comfortable, you're doing it wrong. There was a CEO of Intel years ago. His name was Andy Grove. And he talks about, if you're not paranoid, you're not you're not doing it right. You're not an effective business leader. And it makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
If you have a wide base of customers, you can sleep at night, and that's how you sleep. So if you have 3 customers and you're paranoid, you're probably not going to sleep. That's not a good formula, but you do have to be paranoid. You have to understand, what are the opportunities within this relationship at this point, and what are the threats? I used to share with Kendall, our COO, I said I never wanted to be one of the top 3 expense line items in a customer's budget. Like I didn't want to be on the radar. And I never forget when I hit the radar at Marley Station Mall, which is, obviously falling apart at this point in time. And I got called in by the GM just to, how can we cut costs? And I'm like, your electrical keys breaking. I don't know how to
Yeah.
cut costs, right?
Do you
And
want
you're
the
gonna have to
lights
go,
on?
what's that?
Do you want the lights to turn on?
Right. Well, they definitely went the
Kind of
lights
a
on the week before Black Friday.
yeah.
That's an important time for them. But so how do you mitigate the threat? It's get deeper within the organization. You need to build relationships above and below your contact. Those maintenance techs are so critically important. And the maintenance tech's not going to align with Ray McLaughlin. I'm coming there in a suit. And I don't hunt, I don't fish, So you send in your, service manager to establish the relationship with the maintenance techs, and maybe they go hunting on the weekend and fishing on the weekend. Then you have to pivot above them to the VP, and maybe you get the VP out one day and say, hey, we're going to do a fishing trip, and we're going to take, 20 folks from your group, and you get the VP of facilities out there. Don't invite the purchasing people out on the fishing trip. That's a little dicey, but you need to then maneuver into the purchasing department. There's a lot harder to establish relationships in purchasing, but you need to understand who the purchasing manager is on that work, because these are all the threats, but they're also all the opportunities.
Yeah.
If Baltimore Gas and Electric had a $1 million job and my father's best friend who happened to work there wanted to give us the work, he wasn't going to be able to do that. He could send a $10,000 PO our way, and he did it all the time. He did it for all his contractors because he wanted his people to reap the rewards of that small work, knowing that the bigger job was going to be a big job. And, so you do have to get deeper, and you have to go through, every facet, every layer of the organization and establish some relationships.
Yeah. I mean, I think a real threat is turnover, right? In the property and facility management world, certainly company and property type matter a little more, but we constantly hear from our customers turnover, or all of a sudden John Doe didn't work there anymore. Or I'll see we generate a sales opportunity for somebody and it's like, hey, I'm glad I got this email. As you can probably tell, I'm no longer at XYZ Corp. I'm now with ABC, right? So I think that turnover is a real threat. And one thing that we've gotten better about is, hey, we've brought in this new person. Like immediately, we're going to set up a meeting with them. We're going to get on a video call with them. If we were local, I would want to go meet them. Again, an advantage to the people working local accounts. Just starting like right away, like top priority, like get on a call with them, boom, right away, just to start building that relationship. I think that's a real one that people need to do a little better job of.
Well, you called it a threat, and I agree it's a threat, but I actually viewed that as an opportunity.
Sure, I'll say both.
Yeah, I know, but you can look at it as a threat, and I have a great example of, again, a mall in Maryland where I was so connected. My contact went to work at the best and biggest mall in Maryland, and he told me, he said, I won't be able to get you in there right away, but I will get you in there. And I said, well, who's taking your place? And he told me his name. And I go, can we do a lunch together? So I ended up doing a lunch with the new facilities director at the old mall. It was a layup. He had teed it up. I didn't even have to ask him when I was getting the work at the new mall. I was literally just waiting for POs. And like back then we had a fax machine, and I just see a fax paper on the floor, and I'm picking up POs from, this mall, the new mall. And so it is an opportunity, but it is also a threat. If you don't have a process for it, it's a major threat. I will say that plant and facilities folks are longer tenured than your average commercial property manager. And, again, they tend to stay. They do. They tend to stay. So that long-standing relationship can be incredibly valuable. And the property manager that has a little more turnover, you may not want to hear this, but you think you own them. But when they change their jobs, because you might be a 7 on a 10 scale, you thought you were a 10, they tend to try the new vendors at the new co frequently. Yeah, I read it on our opportunity reports all the time. And so you have to also understand that you thought you owned the relationship with Susie Jones, who was a commercial property manager. She left CBRE, went to JLL. You better be on it. You better be on it, because they do try. They sometimes, especially if they go to a new building, they keep the incumbent provider for at least a stint and give them a try. Why would you switch your electrical contractor? You're in a 25-story office building that XYZ has been servicing for 15 years. And you just go in and fire them and bring someone new in, and then we screw it up. You're going to look really stupid. So yeah, you have to realize that if they go to a new building, you're going to have to kind of resell that. It might take time, but if they really like you and you're a good vendor, they will work you in over time. And you have to accept that.
Yeah. Bryan Dunkel, you got anything to add on these kind of threats, challenges?
Yeah. And I think it all kind of coalesces where, again, property management turnover, sure. And that's the value of building relationships deeper with multiple contacts within an organization. So, again, if the property manager leaves, maybe you still have that relationship with the building engineer, right? Or you still have that relationship with the regional VP. So, I mean, that just goes back to, building the relationship, being present, staying visible. I think all of that, can turn those perceived threats into those opportunities. And then again, when that buyer goes from, let's say, JLL to Prologis, maybe they take you, and maybe it's not going to be immediate, as Ray said, but you're still going to get your hat in the ring at that new property as well.
Yeah. And if you're, I don't care if you're doing 5 million or 50 million or 100 million, as the owner of the business, you have to define what your role is going to be. And, I heard a saying the other day where it was referencing private equity. They run the business out of a spreadsheet. Okay. And, I've got a degree from University of Maryland's business school on my wall. I'm not a Harvard guy. But if you run your contracting business out of a spreadsheet, I'm going to kick your ass. I can read a spreadsheet. I know accounting incredibly well. If you're going to run your business out of a spreadsheet and you're going to let me go in and terrorize your customer base, you're going to lose. So get out of the spreadsheet. And if you're a spreadsheet guy and you can't get out of the spreadsheet, put a killer in this role to go out and win this business. That's where you win. And stop bitching that you didn't win the job, because I did. We can call, maybe we'll have our next guest will be the president of the electrical company that we put out of business. I'm not kidding, guys. It's that simple. This is not selling high-tech equipment to Fortune 500 companies. You're selling against competitors that fail all the time. How's XYZ doing? Oh, man, they kind of fucked up the last job. Well, there's your opportunity. No, they're doing pretty good. Oh, they never make a mistake. Oh, I didn't say that. They make a lot of mistakes. Well, what mistake did they make? Oh, well, they almost burned down our storage shed last year. Okay, what would that have done? Would you have gotten fired? Oh, I'd have gotten fired. Okay, great. I won't burn it down. It's that simple. They will tell you everything the incumbents are doing wrong. And yeah, are you going to get some, if I was competing against some of the bigger union guys, yeah, they didn't make a lot of those stupid mistakes, but they didn't care about the customer either. So then you pivot to, well, how's the relationship with ABC? They don't even know who we are. When I call there, they don't even know who we are. They're like, oh, what's your name again? What company is this? Then you win with the service aspect. Figure out a way to win. It's that simple.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really great ending. I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to close with, but I think that, hey, figure out a way to win. I think another one that was great was, once you get the relationship and you get the new contact, start your process over. Those are some big highlights, right?
Wait,
Bryan Dunkel?
Yeah, well, I think for you, Aaron always says the beginning of a month is starting at 0 at AltaVista.
Yeah.
When we sell and Aaron and Bryan sell for AltaVista along with other folks, you're done. You have a great June. You start at zero. It sucks, but you're starting at zero. You get that new relationship opportunity. You're starting at zero. You got to just keep grinding out the process. And if you can't do it, you find people to do it that can do it effectively. Good communicators, good listeners, people that can influence, people that know how to move conversations. I always say, when I sell, I'm walking you down my path. That's my rule. If you get off my path, I'm going to change. I'm going to put you back. And I'm not going to sell to you until you're back on my path. I was talking to my son the other day. He's down and out, by the way. He's been killing it. He's getting his teeth kicked in right now. I go, it's June, man. People are on vacation. But he had a situation where he couldn't influence and he couldn't get it done. And I said, the customer's here and you're here. You can't influence when you don't have the control of the conversation. I said, you start to influence when you get here, right? So when you're above and you have control, they're on your path is when you can influence. Those are just good tricks of the trade. So when to ask, how to ask, what to ask for, it depends on the situation and I think the progression that you're in. I did have one more on obstacles.
Yeah, go for it.
Our first client was a roofing contractor, and they were putting new homes on roofs in 2011, and they were like a $20 million company at some point in time. When I met with him, he said, we're going to be out of business in a year or two. Obviously, the housing meltdown. So I said, well, can you put roofs on apartments and condominiums? Because I knew he couldn't do flat, but he could do shingle work. And he said, yeah, I can do that. So I said, I'm going to make you the best, roofing replacement repair company within that space over the next 3 to 5 years. But you got to take my advice and listen to me. Because he was a builder. He worked for builders. He had a different mentality on service. The second job he did in a very good condominium maintenance management company, he tarped the roof incorrectly and water went running through every unit in the building. Now, fortunately, it was only like a 14-unit building. He called me and said, I'm getting off of this job. I'm going to get sued. I'm going to lose my ass on this job. And I said, if you walk off of this job, I'm firing you. I said, you need to own the damage that you did. You need to go out and buy $500 gift cards for all 14 residents that you destroyed. They have insurance and they're going to use your insurance. Give them $500 gift cards and say you're sorry. He told me I was nuts. He did it. He got more work. So talking about a big obstacle, I never had one like that. He had a major insurance claim on his insurance. They had all these pissed off tenants in the building. He handled it really well. He turned it into an opportunity, got more business.
Right. One of our customers,
I'm just kidding.
One of our customers just posted on LinkedIn recently about, I won my first big exterior apartment painting project or whatever. And he goes, as a young entrepreneur and business person, it's my first big crack at it. No one really taught me about sprayers and wind. And he goes, all of a sudden I look over and 9 cars, the entire sides of the cars are covered in elastomeric exterior commercial grade paint. 9 residents' cars. I go,
it happens, man.
That's a pretty good one right there.
Look, dude, I know we're running out of time and we can certainly lop this off if you want, but I never told you this story. I tried to get in Annapolis Mall, and I hope he never listens to this because he might still be there, but I couldn't get in there. They were married. And we would call, you can ask Nichols, we would cold call. I said, we're going to Annapolis Mall. And he's like, we were there last week. I don't care. We kept dropping our card off. Is Bill here? Is Bill here? Well, he was walking by one day. He's like, you guys are tenacious. So they had a saw cutting job. We had to cut the main thoroughfare of the mall at night, patch it back up, mall opens, and then it's like a 4-day project. And then we had to trench in, put new pipes in for these kiosks in the mall. So night 1, it's a wet saw. The saw breaks. They've cut like 5 pieces of the concrete. Night 2, the saw breaks. Night 3, the guy calls me. He goes, why don't you bring a backup saw? This is a true story. And I said, that would be a great idea. Maybe you should run my operations department. Breaks again. So he's like, I am throwing you off this job. I go, this job will get done. So me, the helper of 2 years, went on the job all night, and we couldn't get through we couldn't get through it. We couldn't cut it. So we had a non-watered saw, basically, a dry saw. If you could imagine how much dust gets created when you dry saw through tile and concrete, and guess who sawed the whole floor? Me. So my guy's like, you're creating a lot of dust. I go, I don't care. This job is getting done. So when we looked up at 6 o'clock in the morning, they had the Christmas balls hanging from the ceiling of the mall. There was 2 inches of dust on everything. The maintenance director came in shaking his head. He said 200 feet each direction, 4 different corridors, every single store had dust on their glass that was an inch thick. So, hey, that's an objection. I don't think we got another. By the way, I don't think I was able to overcome that one.
Did you get it done?
Yeah, we finished the job. We got a pretty big bill, by the way.
Yeah.
I actually do think we got back in years later because he laughed about it. And so, yeah, things happen on that first job, and you just have to fix it. And sometimes it could cost you some money. But if you want that customer, you got to invest in a relationship.
Yeah,
it'll pay dividends. Being a stand-up contractor will pay dividends, whether you're servicing retail, homeowners, commercial, industrial. People appreciate trust and honesty.
Yeah, I think that's a great close, right? Unless Bryan Dunkel, unless you have anything else, I think that's a great way to end it.
No, I was just going to say, show up, do what you say you're going to do, communicate efficiently. There you go.
That's
pretty easy stuff.
Good
cool.
stuff,
Well, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of the AltaVista Angle, the podcast by AltaVista Strategic Partners. You can check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks, and we look forward to having you back for a future episode.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.